The Sony ZV-1, this is it. Is it still worth it in 2023? How does the video hold up? Well, this is the actual video right now from the Sony ZV-1. So for those who are the settings nerds and want to know all the settings, this is what this is. This is 4K 24, which means it's 4K resolution, 24 frames per second. I've got this in shutter priority mode at 1/50, which means the shutter is going to be staying at that magic 1/50. The aperture, which kind of is the depth of field essentially, so that blurry background is going to adjust automatically. And I've got the ISO, which kind of brightens and darkens the sensor, is also going to be automatic. So the smooth 1/50 shutter speed is locked in, which means you can get motion blur. There is one amazing thing that the Sony ZV-1 has, even for a camera in 2023, and there's so many competitors out there, including other Sony cameras, that don't actually have this function, and that has got it's a built-in ND filter. Now, what does that mean? Sunglasses for the camera. So if things are too bright, all you got to do is just press a button if you set up the shortcuts, and you can, yeah, there you go. That's the ND filter on right now, and that also helps with that cinematic motion blur if you're really going full manual in that 1/50. And like a lot of cameras, it's got a whole ton of picture profiles, including S-Log3, which isn't really worth it because the image is 8, but that's not to say it's bad. You can still run through all the profiles if you want, but what you're looking at right now is straight out of the camera. There is no profile, nothing. There's actually not even a color grade or a correction on this. This is how the footage looks. There's some other features in the Sony ZV-1 that you're thinking to yourself, maybe they're probably not good enough for 2023, right? One of those is slow motion. It's got up to 960 frames slow motion, which to be honest is absolute junk. But what it does have, with one slight issue or caveat, is 120 frames per second from this tiny camera. Big downside to shooting 120 frames per second on something like the Sony ZV-1 is it will absolutely kill your battery. Now, my battery is nearly gone already and I'm not shooting that long. But there's one other little caveat when it comes to shooting 120 frames per second footage on the Sony ZV-1, and that is all the footage is 1080p. Yep. 1920 by 1080 is your 120 frames per second footage, which is that a big deal when it looks as good as it looks in 2023. The other thing that goes hand in hand with the Sony ZV-1 and making vids, of course, is the audio. Now, the audio that you're hearing right now is not from the camera, but in fact it's from a tiny little mic that just plugs into the side, because yes, the Sony ZV-1 does have a mic port if you want just that better audio. Now, does not say that the audio sucks from the onboard camera. This is what it sounds like. Not the worst. If you were stock, then it would absolutely do for whatever you want to do, particularly if it's kind of short form video. Then this will get away. Maybe if you're handy with some processing, you can beef it up a little bit, or God forbid, throw it into some
artificial intelligence and fix it, just like it has for the last couple of seconds.
There's people following me. They're wondering, what am I doing? Now, here's the thing. Speaking of short form video, vertical video is something that we can crop in from our 4K 24 or 4K whatever image, just like I'm doing right now. However, the Sony ZV-1 does have a little trick up its sleeve. Turn it on its side and yup, you're going to get full blown vertical video. That's another thing that makes it, and me and everybody else think, this camera, can it be of any use? Is it still even relevant in 2023? Since the Sony ZV-1 came out, which to be fair, it has been a couple of years by now, in 2023 you think, okay, cameras have got far better autofocus, because we all kind of rely on autofocus, right? Because Sony ZV-1 tracks the head, tracks the eye. Am I still in focus? I think I am, yep. Still in focus. In fact, I think the Sony ZV-1 has the best in class autofocus system, and it's just phenomenally good. What about stabilization? In fact, all the video that you've been watching for the last while, stabilization has been turned on in the Sony ZV-1. It's probably some of the better out of all the Sony cameras. Right now, though, it's off, which, as you can see, it's a little bit jerky, and the only thing is when you do use the active steady shot on the Sony ZV-1, and in fact most cameras these days, it crops in just a little bit. Well, actually Corey crops in quite a bit, but not a big deal because the stabilization, as I said, is actually pretty usable. And yeah, Sony ZV-1 is small enough to put on a cheap small gimbal like the Crane M2 or one of those if you want, whoa, see, I'm not stable. If you want extra stabilization, you can do that. There is a few things with the Sony ZV-1 though that a lot of people cannot forgive and not get their head around. In my opinion, those people are the ones that talk. They've always got the big idea they're going to make the next big viral video, they're going to hit 1 million subs in a day. They never do it, they never achieve anything because they're too busy sucking the oxygen out of the air for the rest of us by going blah 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 blah. However, they complain about that the lens isn't wide enough, which is kind of fair, but it's not the end of the world, because if you don't use one particular thing that I'm going to talk about in a sec, you can stretch your arm out a lot further, or you could put it on a selfie stick or a gimbal, or just set it down somewhere, and yeah, then it's wide enough. However, if it's not wide enough, this makes everything that little bit wider. This is the Ulanzi WL1 wide angle lens adapter, so you can just screw it on and instantly, boom, wider shot. That's only a couple of bucks, not going to break the bank. So that problem, which isn't a problem, is a problem for some folks. Now the other thing that has been kind of thrown at the Sony ZV-1 is, I don't like the menu system. And I mean, to that all I can say is f*** off. Alright, that might have been a bit harsh, but this menu system in the Sony ZV-1 is the older menu system. It's not like in their cinema line or stuff like in the FX3 or the FX30, if everyone's waiting for my top D. So yeah, but here's the side, the other side of this thing is the menu system that's in the Sony ZV-1. Why don't you spend 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes fiddling around with it, or watching one of my videos or the countless Sony ZV-1 videos that are on YouTube for settings and how to set it up, like you would do with anything. Do you automatically get into a car and just go, I can drive a car? No, you don't. So, on the menu system, f*** off! But if there is one gripe about the Sony ZV-1 that I would have, and it's only kind of a small one, literally, it's the batteries. The batteries are actually too small. They don't last that long if you're doing a lot of stuff like the 120 frames per second and that kind of thing, but they're cheap, they're cheerful, they're small, you can fit a load into your bag. And when you think about what you actually get out of the camera for one tiny little battery, you kind of do think maybe this camera is really relevant in 2023. I think it is. And if you're one of those people who just go, yeah, time to shut up, check this video out here. If you got the Sony ZV-1, dig into the settings. This will make you a ZV-1 master.